The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us at the ServerTech PowerTips Live series of sessions. My name is Jawahar. I lead one of the innovation teams within Legrand's data center division. So before we get into today's session, I wanted to set the stage as to why we are here. A couple of us were talking about how our worlds have changed and how we manage things from remote and do everything from home. As you can see, I'm in my beautiful office, which I happen to share with my kids now because they are in online school. So this is our world now. This is the new norm, at least for the near future. So we thought, how are our customers handling this? I know our customers invested in remote technologies, but can they how are they handling it all the time using remote technologies? So we came up with this idea to put a series together where we can get all of you together and share some tips and tricks as to how you can best utilize the technologies that you already have at your disposal. So these are intended to be very short training sessions. So we'll start with 15 minutes of training, which is a live demo conducted by our support team. And then we'll follow it up with another 15 minutes of Q&A and most importantly, discussion on how things are, how you're handling things. We just want to hear from you and be here available for you. So to introduce the topic of the day and today's speaker, I'm going to turn it over to Joel Bryan, who's our head of global support, and he'll take it from here. Joel.
Okay, thank you, Joey. Thank you. As Jawahar said, my name is Joel Bryan, and I'm the Global Director for Post-Sale Support, Documentation, and Services here at Legrand for the Raritan and the ServerTech brands. So today's session is going to be, how to ensure that you're receiving critical alerts on events. We want to make sure that for those items in your environment that is truly critical to your infrastructure, that you set up the alerts that way you're alerted when something goes wrong and you have an action plan that you can put in place to sort of remediate that issue. And walking us through this session, the step-by-step, is Bruce Auclair, who is our post-sale support product specialist, senior, I should add, as part of our technical support organization based out of Reno in the ServerTech office. Following the walkthrough, like Jawahar said, we're going to open it up for questions pertaining to this particular subject. Feel free to type your questions in the comments section. And additionally, if there are other subject areas you'd like to see us cover in future sessions, please feel free to add those as well. But for any other pressing issues that you have regarding your environment as it relates to the ServerTech topology, please send us an email to support@servertech.com. If you need to talk to a live person, you can always call us. We're there to take your calls. Okay, so right now I'm gonna hand it over to Bruce, and Bruce is gonna take us through. Bruce, the ball is now in your court.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you for joining today. This is Bruce Auclair with Server Technology in Reno, Nevada. And what we're going to look at today and answer is how to make sure you are receiving critical alerts. And in this case, this is from your intelligent PDUs. We're going to be discussing our Pro Series products, current generation. So hopefully you're seeing my screen. This is a login prompt for a pair of PDUs at my office, remotely, of course. I'm going to log in, which needs to be at administrator level. Okay, and if you're uncertain, you can look in the upper right-hand corner to verify you've logged in, that you have credentials as an administrator. Now, the three different methods that the Pro Series PDUs have for providing notification to you about events or critical alerts, those three methods are syslog, SNMP, and email. So I'm going to take a quick look at syslog first, which we will find in configuration network. Okay, we've got syslog here. Now, syslog requires an external application somewhere else on your network. We support sending notifications. These are the same notifications that get logged in the PDU's own internal log, which is limited. So syslog serves two purposes. It gives you a permanent offsite record of events and other things that occur with the PDU, as well as if your SNMP, I'm sorry, your syslog server, a lot of them do have capabilities to filter and provide alerts to you through their own means. The key things with the server tech PDUs is that we have ability to send syslog messages to up to 2 different syslog hosts. So I'm not going to actually demonstrate syslog today, but this is where you would enter either the IP address or the host name for your up to 2 different syslog servers. In most cases, you will not change the port. That really depends on the syslog server. It does need to match what it expects. That is the default for most. And with respect to these 2 choices, we have support for syslog messaging by 2 different RFCs. You might consider, depending upon the syslog server application that you're using, choosing the higher level RFC. It has some expanded capabilities with respect to severity level. So your syslog server may be able to make use of that and filter to give you messages only based upon more critical events. Okay, so syslog is number 1. These messages go out immediately as the event or action occurs. The next thing to take a look at is SNMP. SNMP will be the most common used interface for receiving notifications. SNMP is going to communicate with your management application or SNMP manager, DCIM applications. A terrific example is PowerIQ from Sunbird. In either case, I am not going to be demonstrating receiving notifications through a central management application. I will be just showing you how to verify through a generic trap receiver that the PDU is sending those traps. Okay, so the basics with SNMP is that there are, similar to syslog, you have up to 2 destinations that you can define, a destination 1 and a destination 2. I've defined a destination already, which is my laptop here at my home office. And another thing to note is that out of box, the PDUs default to both SNMP v2 and v3 being disabled. So I have already enabled them because it does take a couple minutes after you enable them to perform a restart. So it's pre-enabled at this point in time, and I am going to demonstrate just using SNMP version 2. For traps, most cases, your SNMP management application doesn't require any matching of community strings. But if your management application is constantly polling the PDUs, which is very common, you do need to make sure that at least the get community string matches what your SNMP manager expects. And if you intend to use that management application to configure or make changes, you do need to also put in a secret set community string that matches what your SNMP manager is expecting. Okay, now with SNMP, the notifications similar to syslog go out immediately as they occur. There is, however, a repeat time that defaults to 60 seconds. That means that if there is an event that is being reported by an SNMP trap, it will repeat every minute by default until that issue is resolved. Okay, there are some other options for restricting SNMP interaction, but the final thing to note right now is that we have a system location field that is user definable, and you will make use by choosing whatever you'd like to, typically as a way to identify which PDU is sending that message. In this case, I am communicating to a pair of PDUs in the server technology tech support lab in our cabinet number 2, and there's 2 PDUs for supporting dual supply gear. Okay, the third method for providing notifications is going to be by email or simple mail transport protocol. We do support sending to up to 2 different email addresses, very similar to both syslog with its destinations and with SNMP. First thing to note though, with server technology email support, the one thing that we cannot provide today is authentication with email or SMTP servers that require what is known as Start TLS. That's a certificate-based authentication protocol, and we do not have support for that. There is, however, many applications out there. If you're running your own SMTP server, your IT department should be able to assist with setting it up so it doesn't require that type of authentication. If you are using third-party services such as what Server Technology and Legrand use, which is Outlook 365, they have realized that there are plenty of devices that do not have ability to authenticate with Start TLS, and they have provided a workaround. If you use Outlook 365, we can discuss that solution offline, and I will demonstrate how it works today. So with email, you do need to enable the email notifications. I did that ahead of time. And you have 4 different categories over here for what type of notifications you can receive. Event notifications, certainly you're going to want to enable. I think that is enabled by default once you enable the notifications. Event messages are messages that will go out automatically based upon something happening that wasn't user initiated. So for example, if a circuit breaker in your PDU is overloaded in trips, you will get notification. If you have thresholds for temperature and temperature goes above your high warning or alarm threshold, you will receive a notification. From the power side of things, same examples. If you set thresholds for amperage on a line or a phase or a branch, you can receive notifications if those amperage levels are exceeded. Authorization messages is the next category, and that's typically not going to be used. That's really only there if you wish to receive notification every time a user logs into the PDU. I'll give you the who and when and from where. Power messages is if you wish to receive notification every time an outlet or any outlets or branches switch on or off or reboot. So if for example, you did have a circuit breaker trip, you'll receive a notice saying the circuit breaker trip, and you'll also receive notices saying that the outlets associated with that breaker went off. Configuration messages. This is if you wish to be notified every time a authenticated administrator user makes a change to the configuration in the PDU. I don't think too many people are interested in that. What I am going to show you is event and power. Before we continue, let me mention here, we've got a subject ID field that defaults to it's a method for identifying the PDU. It defaults to using the word century with the final 3 octets of the unit's MAC address. Alternatively, you can use location, which is a user definable field. You're going to find that under configuration system. I've predefined the location to be an identifier that it is the PDUs in cabinet 2 in my lab. Okay, so once you have everything configured, and hopefully this is already set up and you're just trying to verify that it is still functioning, we have a test button. So we're going to take a look in a moment. I am sending a test email. And we have test message sent. That's good news. I may not have mentioned it yet, but the way that the email operates, it is unlike SNMP. It will send an email every minute on the minute, unless there is nothing new to report. So we're not going to flood your inbox telling you the same thing over and over again. Okay, and here we go. We see that email test was successful, so we know email is working. So then how do you know if an event is actually going to result in you getting notified by syslog, SNMP, or email? And there's a couple of different ways. One of those, in the case of a switch PDU, which is what I have in my office, a very simple method will be to just switch an outlet on or off or reboot it. Now, you want to make sure it's an outlet that's not in use or choose a different way. I am going to reboot outlet number 1 on that PDU. And if you don't have switch PDUs, if you have smart PDUs, something else you could consider would be to change a threshold, for example, for temperature. So I'm going to take a quick look here at current values. We see that temperature is just around 24 degrees Celsius. Let's go ahead and change the threshold for that sensor. Okay, this is a page for changing various things similar to other pages throughout the system. And before I move on to changing the thresholds, you can see that for all the different sensors, you can choose individually whether or not to enable or disable trap notifications as well as email notifications. Okay, down here, we're going to find thresholds. And I'm going to lower these values to be less than the current value, which will result in, let's take a quick look, in a high alarm condition. So we see that the system is recognizing that we have a high alarm. This does mean that we should have received an SNMP trap and we should have received email. So let's take a quick look at my trap receiver, and we see a number of traps. Okay. Oops. Additional ones. Something else going on. Okay, so we performed a reboot earlier, and we see by the trap that the outlet did switch off. A reboot by default is a 15-second cycle, and 15 seconds later, we see that the outlet switched back on. And then after that, we had created a condition to receive a high alarm on temperature, and we can validate that here. Now, you will be looking, of course, at your own SNMP management application. Any SNMP manager or DCIM ought to have a trap receiver, and you would be looking in that place in your own application. Let's take a look at email. Got a number of emails at this point. That was my email test successful. And then we did a reboot. So we see a reboot occurred. We saw the outlet go off. And then 15 seconds later was in the next minute, we see that the outlet switched back on. And then later, we see a high temperature alert. So at this point, we've demonstrated how to receive messages by SNMP, by email, and syslog as well, though I did not demonstrate that. And with that, I think that concludes my presentation. I hope that you'll join us next week, and let me pass this back to Jawahar Joel.
All right.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
So right now, I think we have a few more minutes. So this is the Q&A and discussion part of the session. So I'm going to unmute all the lines. And before you ask any questions, please check on your side as well if your microphone is unmuted. Sometimes you may want to do that as well. So now you're all unmuted. Any questions? In the meantime, let me take a look at any questions on chat.
Hey guys, I see the meeting was recorded. Is there any way that you guys can share it? Just want to check.
Absolutely. This meeting, this session, and all the subsequent sessions are going to be recorded, and we'll be posting the link pretty soon. We're just deciding on the platform, and it should be available pretty soon for you to view anytime. Yes, and it'll be included in the follow-up email. So there's
okay. So we'll be receiving an email once these videos are posted, right?
Yeah. So the follow-up email will have a link to where the video is going to be posted.
Thanks.
Okay. So Bruce, I see one question on the chat. Can I receive alerts on both the destinations or is the second one just a failover?
They are not a failover. Are you able to hear me right now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, great.
yes,
No,
we can hear you.
no. Yeah, they are going at the same time to both destinations. It is both in all cases. That is true for the syslog. If you have two destinations, messages go to both. Two trap destinations, same answer, and the same for the email as well. If you've got two addresses, they will go to both at the same time.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. So again, you can either ask the questions by unmuting or on voice, or you can type it in as on the chat. Either way works. So while we wait for further questions, I'll take this chance to remind everybody this is a series of sessions. So this is the first one that we're starting today. Every Thursday, it's going to be for Server Tech products for the next 4 weeks. And we have similar sessions arranged for Raritan products on Wednesdays. So we started that series yesterday, and we have 4 more to go. If you have topics that you have in mind that we should cover, please let us know now or in future emails.
Okay, Javi, I don't know if do we have any other questions coming in?
I don't see any yet. Bruce, there's one question I had when you mentioned the notifications. How often do these notifications show up? You mentioned a frequency of a minute. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, yeah, with SNMP, well, first off, syslog, since I mentioned that first, syslog messages go out immediately all the time. It's identical to the moment that we log it in the PDU's own internal log, which we can take a look at. This will give you an example of what the messaging will be for syslog servers. Exactly the same message that we see in the own systems log will be going out to those syslog servers. So those go out one time as they occur. When we talk about SNMP, it is a configurable repeat time. The messages go out immediately as the event occurs and will repeat at the interval that you choose, with the default being that 60 seconds over here. So you can change that. So with SNMP, it is persistent. The messaging continues every minute by default until the issue is resolved. And by email, it's not really shown anywhere on the screen, but as I mentioned earlier, the email functions by sending a message or messages every minute on the minute. Whatever occurred within that previous 1 minute period will be sent on the minute every minute, and does not repeat. So we're not going to send you an email every minute to tell you the same thing that we told you a little while ago, and we're not going to flood your inbox unless there's something new to report.
Great, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, and I guess I should mention, if you wanted to no longer receive SNMP traps, you could, after you've identified what the trap is, you would have to take a look. You'd have to log in at an administrator level and system. And for the example that I showed earlier, if you have no ability to resolve the issue and get your temperature back down to an acceptable area, and you don't want to receive emails or traps, you could, and it was sensor 1 that I was looking at before, you could disable those notifications until the issue is resolved, and then later re-enable them.
Great. Thank you, Bruce.
Hey, Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how often do server technologies release the firmware for the PDUs, and what do you like? Is there any place where you'll get notified? I mean, as a customer, like, do we get notification that, hey, there's the firmware released for this model? Maybe it's recommended to update. Is there anything like that?
There definitely is. That's an initiative handled by our, I believe, our marketing department, but I get those notifications and I know they go out to our customers. I'm not sure how they collect that list. Certainly, I know for certain that if you have an account with us that is a dashboard account, which you can find on our homepage, if you want to make sure that you will receive those notifications, if you don't have an account today, this is the ServerTech homepage. You can go over here and request an account. And when you go in and sign up to have a dashboard account, then that will definitely get you on the list to receive notifications of firmware updates, which typically occur, no greater than every 6 months, unless there's an issue we've identified that needs to be rectified. Then we may have a quicker response at posting a release.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right.
Bruce, can the PDU be configured to automatically pull an update or at least go look for updates?
It can, but it has some limitations. The only method we support for the PDU actually going to get an update would be to utilize the FTP client that is built into the PDU. There is an auto update function for the FTP client to periodically go out and check an FTP server on your network for a update file. And if it identifies that the available binary update file is newer than what it is currently running, then it will automatically update the PDU. So yes, if FTP traffic is allowed on your network and you have an FTP server on the network, we can enable and set up auto updates to occur daily or weekly at a time of your choice. That is, it's an hourly choice, and there is some automatic offsets set in there. So if you've got 500 PDUs checking for updates, they're not really all going to check on the hour. They're going to be staggered. Yeah, so FTP client can get an update automatically from an FTP server. The only tricky part there is that most networks today, many devices are halting FTP traffic. You'd have to make sure that is open.
Excellent, thanks.
Yeah, well, and to expand further on that, the applications such as PowerIQ that I mentioned earlier have capability to, wouldn't be the PDU automatically going and getting an update file, but the application would be updating the PD for you.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Let's see if we have.
I hope that doesn't involve any downtime in the firmware, update needed.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
I'm asking, I hope that firmware update doesn't need any downtime.
Oh, no, not at all. No, definitely not. No, I mean, yeah. You will lose communication with the PDU for typically 130, 140 seconds maybe, as the PDU restarts and writes the new firmware image to the flash sectors. So you lose communication temporarily, but with respect to power at the outlets, absolutely no, there is no effect on power delivered at the outlets.
Thanks.
All right, any final questions, final thoughts? We have a couple of minutes left. Would anybody like to share how this working from home, managing from home is? Any interesting stories?
I wish.
Or are there any other topics that you would like to see us cover and focus on? Not even in the coming weeks, but down the road, we think this might be something that we could continue on a regular basis.
All right.
Okay, Javi.
In that case, yeah, we can wrap this webinar up and have the recording posted in the follow-up email. So at this moment, we want to take the chance to thank everybody for spending time with us and joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in the following webinars as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.